From Old South Meeting House. Recorded for consumption at any time. It's Tea Party Tonight with Rob Crean. Presented by Revolutionary Spaces. With special guests. Historian Serena Zabin. Historian Eliga Gould. And Caroline Klibanoff of Made by Us. And now your host, Rob Crean.
Welcome to Tea Party Tonight. It is almost the 4th of July, and here at Revolutionary Spaces, we will be hosting a reading of the Declaration of Independence from the balcony of the old State House, where it was first read to the people of Boston. Now, this was actually not on July 4th, but rather July 18th of 1776, because it took a while for the Declaration to make it from Pennsylvania to Boston. It would have gotten here faster if they'd taken the pike, but they didn't want to pay the tolls. You know, John Adams thought that July 2nd, not the 4th, would be the day we celebrate, because that was the day that the Declaration was approved by the Continental Congress. Another crazy thing he believed was that he would serve 8 years as president. You know, John Adams actually started a tradition here. All presidents born in Massachusetts only served one term. We'd love to break that tradition, and we think there's only one ticket that can do it. The 4th of July also marks the passing of both John Adams and Thomas Jefferson in 1826. Adams' last words were reportedly, "Jefferson still lives." Jefferson's last words, "Rosebud." Our annual firework display is going to be a little bit different this year. First off, the Boston Pops will be playing at Tanglewood in the Berkshires instead of their usual Hatshell location, which is the worst thing to happen to the Hatshell since the 1994 Green Day riot. We lost a lot of wallet chains. Also, the fireworks usually shot off from Boston Harbor will be set off from Boston Common, which, unlike Boston Harbor, is flammable. Oh, and also, due to COVID protocols, the Boston Pops won't be doing their annual brass section empties their spit valves into your kids' mouths meet and greet. So, sorry kids, next year. This time of year, you see a lot of American flags around. You know, while designing the American flag, George Washington insisted to Betsy Ross that it be as stylistically different from the British flag as possible, which is why she modeled the color scheme after the French flag. They're all the same colors. All those flags are we love the red, white, and blue. Could be in France. Oh wait, you hear about this? There's a new coalition of museums doing outreach to younger and more diverse audiences called Made by Us. Tea Party Tonight, we're honored to be part of the inaugural Made by Us Civic Season, which started just a couple of days ago. Civic Season has received mixed reviews. Now, some people are excited to see so many institutions across the country working together to get more people interested in civics in America, whereas other people are like, wait, so you can't even say summer anymore. You gotta say civic season. You can't say summer. You gotta. Oh yeah, now kids gotta go on civic season vacation. You know, I still say summer. I say have a good summer. You can't correct me. It's not. I don't believe in the civic season. I believe in summer. When I was a kid, we called it summer. We didn't call it civic season. In Starbucks, they don't even have beach balls on their cups anymore. Here's the trick. You go into Starbucks, when you order your coffee, you tell them your name is Summer. You got to write it on the cup. Happy civic season. We also just celebrated the anniversary of the Battle of Bunker Hill, which was fought on June 17th, 1775, and was actually fought on Breed's Hill. They would have called it the Battle of Breed's Hill, but they'd already printed the T-shirts. Okay. So the British technically won the Battle of Bunker Hill, but they took heavy casualties. Afterwards, Patriot leader Nathaniel Greene reportedly said, "I'd gladly sell them another hill at the same price." To which the British responded, "Somebody paid this guy?" I mean, come on. All right, we have a great show for you tonight. We have Caroline Klibanoff from Made by Us. We have Serena Zabin to talk about her book, The Boston Massacre, A Family History. And we've got Eliga Gould to talk to us about treaties, plus a whole bunch of other stuff that I cannot believe they are letting us get away with. So please stick around. It's going to be a lot of fun. As schools let out for the summer, our nation's children are jumping headfirst into what they've been waiting all school year for: summer reading assignments. There is a wide variety of YA fare for today's youth to devour, from light dystopias to terminally ill teens to veiled messianic allegories, some of which haven't even made it to the big screen yet. You know, you're never too young to discover the joy of leaving your local multiplex and saying, "The book was better." Though we love fiction here at Tea Party Tonight, we'd like to remind the youngsters that there is a whole world of historical and historical fiction literature out there to bring you back to a time before TikTok, iPhones, and indoor plumbing, in a segment we call Summer Reading List. The Revolutionary War classic Johnny Tremaine is the story of a young, heroic apprentice who finds himself fighting for liberty alongside patriots. Now, see the same tale in an action-packed graphic novel, Johnny Tremaine, The Hand of Justice. A tale of how a simple cyborg boy fought so a man can stand up. Half boy, half machine, all American. This time, freedom doesn't ring. It screams for vengeance. It was called The War to End All Wars. World War I was as appropriately named as the Final Fantasy video game series. War is hell, but some soldiers had the summer of their lives. The German army is just a ragtag group of mostly teenagers trying to have a good time. But the snobby British army across the no man's land wants to ruin the party. Follow Gunter and his compatriots on a mission to end trench warfare and throw the biggest summer rager ever, all while avoiding the scrutiny of their uptight, stuffy commanding officer, Colonel Weinerschnitzel. Get ready for guns, grenades, and girls in It's Gonna Get Loud on the Western Front. These young lads had a mission, and it's awesome. Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau helped shape transcendentalism, returning to nature for its simplicity and isolation. But their writings weren't all good. Check out Emerson's Self-Indulgence and Thoreau's Living in Walden, but also went home for pies a lot. We've all heard of Thomas Paine's famous pamphlet, Common Sense. Now, check out Thomas Paine's Uncommon Sense, with lots of money-saving tips the government doesn't want you to know about, such as registering your horse as a dependent. Louisa May Alcott's Little Women is a beloved tale of Victorian-era ladies finding themselves. But you know what it's missing, true believers? The Avengers. That's why you'll love Marvel Comics' Little Women Endgame, featuring all of your favorite Avengers. Hawkeye, Tony Stark's bodyguard Happy, Michael Douglas's character from Ant-Man, Hank Pym, and of course, Joe. Nuff said. To the teenage mind, nothing is more compelling than heartbreak. Compiled for the first time, The Cries of Freedom, The Declaration of Independence, and other breakup letters. Benjamin Franklin is best known for publishing Poor Richard's Almanac. But did you know the $100 bill cover boy didn't stop there? Lesser known is Dumb Judd's Farmer's Thesaurus, containing up to 6 words for plows. The book went quickly out of print, though, due to the fact that most people who needed it couldn't read. From Wicked to Maleficent to Cruella, today's audiences can't get enough of hearing the other side of famous and beloved tales. The often forgotten rider on the famous Midnight Ride is William Dawes. He went a longer route than Paul Revere and was bullied by British soldiers when captured. For the first time ever, his tale will be told in Diary of a Wimpy Colonist. A highlight of the book is the harrowing depiction of Dawes' treatment by the Redcoats, culminating in a gruesome atomic wedgie. Thomas Jefferson said, "The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. But what are some other household uses? Martha Stewart's 1776 uses for tyrannical blood covers everything from rust removal to scaring the mailman. It's a good thing. Celsius 232 is a dark dystopian alternate history of an America where our society has been overtaken by the metric system. No thank you. The only place you'll be removing the foot from is your backside. Happy reading, folks. We'll be back with more Tea Party Tonight.
Our first guest is the professor of history at Carleton College and the author of the fantastic book, The Boston Massacre, A Family History. Please welcome Serena Zabin. Welcome, Serena.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for being here. I love this book. It was really, it was so interesting and gave me so many new insights on the Boston Massacre, which is, I'm right now sitting in the old State House, which overlooks the site of the Boston Massacre. So it was really great to get this new perspective. Why did you feel like a new book about this subject was necessary?
I didn't start thinking that I was going to write a book about the Boston Massacre. I started because I found a funny little story about a soldier's wife sitting in a Bostonian's house, trash talking actually about her neighbors. And I wondered what a soldier's wife in 1770 was doing, sitting in some Bostonian's kitchen, drinking his beer. I wondered what she was doing there. And I thought, I don't know anything about the soldier's wife. And the more I dug into that story, the more I learned about families and the British military. And it turned out that that was the story that was just waiting there to be told. And that's how it became a book.
Yeah, and trash talking is, there's a lot of it in this book. Some really great stories about trash talking. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the other trash talking that you talk about in the book?
Yeah, one of my favorite is about, it's a story that another Bostonian repeats that between two women, one of them, another soldier's wife, and the other one, a local Bostonian, and they're standing on their stoops on the night of March 5th, 1770. And one of them says, you know, I know that what's going to happen tonight is all these Bostonians are going to be killed. Their asses are going to be laid low, she says. And the other one shoots back, she says, I hope your husband will be killed. Which I thought was, a real indication perhaps of a lack of sympathy between these two neighbors. Another one that actually original woman I was talking about, she claimed that if she saw Bostonians lying in the streets, she would put a stone in her handkerchief and beat their brains out. It's like, whoa, that's some language.
But it was weird though, because there was a lot of talk like that, but then there was it would be sort of people that were connected to the British Army talking to Bostonians they were friends with, saying, I think the Bostonians should have gotten it worse. So they were sort of like separating their identities from who they were as individuals.
I think that's one way of seeing it. I think often of the soldiers who were in Boston during that sort of occupation from 1768 to 1772, a little bit like the National Guard, right? They're people who sometimes are just ordinary people who can be part of a community and nobody looks at them twice. And then sometimes they really look like the arm of the state and they kind of go back and forth. So I think it's a little less about any individual person and a little bit about how they're seen at that moment. But you're completely right that there's all of this violence, right, that people are promising, right, as they're talking to people that you'd think they would be threatening. So in fact, when other historians found these stories, as they did, of people saying, I hope that I have the chance to kill Bostonians, they just looked at those stories and they said, look at these threats of violence, right? This is indication of the kind of hostility that existed between soldiers and civilians. But what I found honestly most interesting about it was the fact that these people were talking to each other.
Yeah.
They're sitting in each other's kitchens, that they are next door neighbors who are slinging words at each other across their stoops.
You talk about the Chambers family a lot, Jane Chambers in particular, in the book, to sort of put a face on the women that were with the army. Why were you so drawn to Jane Chambers and her family?
I really do love Jane Chambers. I opened the book with her, and I was really interested in the Chambers family, in part because they exemplified so much of the story of these families who move around the British Empire, who in some ways through their movement tie together all of these areas of the empire. As this woman moves from Ireland, and then from there she goes to Halifax, from there she goes to Boston, and then from there she actually, she keeps going. She goes to New Jersey, she actually goes to Florida, I think, after that, before she gets back to Britain. She buries children in almost every place that she goes. I found incredibly moving, kind of her persistence in trying to keep her family together. So in fact, at one point I was doing some research in the Boston Public Library, and I found a little receipt from the Boston selectmen who paid a sexton to pay for the burial of somebody that they identified only as a soldier's child. But through some kind of circumstantial evidence, I knew that Jane Chambers and her child had been sent out to Boston Harbor because they had smallpox, and only Jane had returned. And I was pretty positive that was her child who is buried out there in the harbor. And I actually was in tears sitting there in the BPL. So I felt this connection to this woman who worked so hard to make a life for her children in a world that she had very little control over.
One of the most fascinating stories that you tell in the book is the story of the British officer who was charged for, I guess he was charged for inciting a race riot.
Inciting a racial uprising.
Yes.
Yes. So he, Captain Wilson, who comes to be known apparently as Bully Wilson, one night comes out of a bar in Boston, and he sees a couple of enslaved men, and he says, "Go home and slit the throats of your masters, and I'll take care of you. Come to me, I'll take care of you." So he's overheard, and the enslaved men, also tell the selectmen what happened that night. And the selectmen completely freak out because they're terrified that actually he might mean it. There have been many slave revolts and threats of slave revolts that happened in Massachusetts and elsewhere through much of the 18th century. They chase him around Boston, trying to actually give him a warrant to bring him in to ask him some questions. And when they finally bring him in, he says, "Oh, I was drunk. I didn't really mean it." In fact, I think the selectmen don't really believe him. And most of those men whom he had invited to go and, kill their enslavers, many of them end up, I guess is the right word, emancipated within a few years. Most of the men who had been, most of the families who were holding those people as slaves, clearly decide that it would be better maybe to free them on their own terms.
I think specifically what the soldier says to the enslaved men is, he says, "Go home and treat your masters poorly, slit their throats." And I really love that jump from treat them poorly to slit their throats. I feel like it's a massive escalation.
Right. You could either just say, "No, I'm not going to shine your shoes," or you could kill them.
I suggest everyone pick up The Boston Massacre, A Family History. Thank you so much, Serena Zabin, for talking to us.
Thanks for having me on.
We'll be right back.
One of my favorite parts of Tea Party Tonight is this segment where I meet up with some of our writers to make a colonial era drink. So far, we've made grog, which is better than it sounds, and we've made flip, which sounds better than it is. Tonight, we tackle our toughest sounding drink yet. So join us for some Rattle Skull.
I'm joined with a couple of our writers, Wes Hazard and Kendra Dossie, as well as some of my friends. We've got Katie Baker, Shakir Sibley, Ben Weiser, Angela Sawyer, and Alex Zikov.
All this stuff has been heavily rum infused, which is sort of characteristic of the time. During colonial times, we still had a strong relationship with Britain. Obviously, we were a colony, and the Spice Islands in the Caribbean were providing a lot of sugar, which meant a lot of rum up here.
Yeah, Wes, could you tell us a little bit about the history of this drink that will probably get me completely drunk tonight?
From what I could find, there isn't so much written about it other than the ingredients. So if you go to the Oxford English Dictionary and look up Rattle Skull, it will just basically say, see rattle brain. And if you go to rattle brain, it tells you that it's either an empty-headed, noisy person, aka a fool, or it also means rash and noisy behavior. So it seems that the makers of this drink were very aware of the probable effects. It's quite powerful.
Oh, yeah.
The recipe has some variations, obviously being several hundred years old. A lot of people have added to it, made it their own. But basically, what you have is about a pint of dark beer, porter, stout, anything like that you can really work with. You've got 3/4 of an ounce of rum. So I'm using Sailor Jerry for me. You've got 3/4 of an ounce of brandy. So I have Bargain Basement Paul Masson. I feel like I'm in high school again. You have 3 ounces of sherry. I'm not a big wine drinker, so I have cut that to 2 ounces of sherry myself. The recipe that we're working off of indicates that you should use lemon juice, but I actually found most of the recipes that I've seen elsewhere include lime. Nutmeg is recommended to add, if you choose at the end. And then also I've seen a lot of stuff that has had brown sugar syrup. I didn't feel like making brown sugar syrup. I assume that's to cut the bitterness, so you got a lot of booze in here. So I'm just gonna throw in like 3/4 teaspoons of plain white sugar into mine, sort of see how that works out.
Sounds good.
Mileage may vary depending on who you are.
So Wes, you went over what you have for ingredients. Kendra, what have you got?
For the dark beer, I got this Imperial Biscotti beer. There's notes of almond and vanilla. I got the cheapest brandy I could find at Cappy's. I have some leftover Bacardi rum from the last time we did something like this. Obviously, I've had so much of it. The cheapest sherry I could find. When I was at Cappy's, I was like, where's the sherry, to an employee? And he said, oh, she doesn't work here anymore. And I was like, no. And then I took a little bit of my roommate's lemon, because my roommate is not here, so they won't see me so drunk tonight.
Way to go with the Imperial Biscotti. I thought this was a show about America, but all right, whatever.
What does it mean when a stout's imperial? Does it just invade countries? Like, what does this mean?
I went into the liquor store and like, give me your smallest sherry, and it ended up being this gigantic bottle.
I think we all have the same sherry.
We all have the same
dry,
sherry.
I have Crean, but same brand.
Really? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you got cream. I got dry. What do you have, Kendra?
I just have sherry excellent for cooking. That probably means it's gonna taste
Who
bad,
knew
right?
there were so many sherries? We got 3 varieties. The whole gang's all here. Beautiful.
All from the good people at Taylor.
Yeah, this says a light sipping and cooking sherry. My drink is probably gonna taste bad, I realize.
I mean, it's probably fine in a mixed drink. I guess you're just not supposed to drink it straight.
Tell that to my stepdad. Hey-yo.
As you see, I did get the Taylor's. Of course, we're loyal to Taylor's here at Tea Party Tonight.
Hell
Dry
yeah.
sherry. I got Bacardi Black. It looked like a little bit classier than the other Bacardis. I don't know if it is. And then I got VSOP E&J Brandy.
Easy Jesus.
Easy Jesus. I did not get an Imperial Stout. Malasada Stout got donuts on it, so that's...
Oh, nice.
Back in the day, people were drinking from sun up to sundown. They weren't getting like just crazy fall down drunk. I mean, obviously some were, but people would think nothing of having like, a tankard of ale, whatever, to start the day. And you just be working. You get a break at 11's, like midday between, the start of work and supper time. And then you have a late afternoon sort of meal. And then now you're socializing. Whenever you think about colonial or early American history, just remember everybody was floating on a small, tipsy, nice little glow at the base of the neck.
Like even kids, did kids drink?
If you're working, you're drinking. And you were working pretty early at that time. So we're often talking like 2-3% ABV. So it's not like, you just fall down drunk.
Like kids would drink like beer or ale, but you knew a kid had a problem if you saw him drinking cooking sherry.
Clearly.
I'm the
clearly.
Yes.
How much sugar are you going to put in this?
I'm using about 3/4 of a teaspoon. So relatively small amount given how much liquid is in here. And I'm going with just the full pint. I'm going to start with the beer base. Seems like the most logical.
I'm going to do half a pint because I'm alone.
I'm hoping that the no dairy will save us because last time when we did the flip, things got a little crazy about 3 o'clock in the morning after that, and not in a pleasant way at all. So I got my beer, toss it in the rum now.
I'm going for the brandy.
And then the sherry, I cut that.
So just going to put a splash of that.
And then it's
I guess
a lot of sherry, though. I'm surprised.
A heck of a lot of sherry.
Let's hope this is as good for drinking as it is for cooking.
About 2.5 teaspoons, is that right? No, wait. No, it would be 4 teaspoons, right? Wait. How much is this?
So you want 3 ounces of a sherry, which will be 6 tablespoons. A little nutmeg.
I think I have about 1.5 ounces. I'm gonna throw that in. And then I have this squirt of the lemon. That's juice. Yeah.
And think about it, they're doing all this before refrigeration. So this is just straight room temperature back in the day.
Should the nutmeg be stirred in or should it just be like garnish?
I think it was applied to like a garnish, like, if you were to get like a hot cocoa or a vanilla chai or something like that today.
That's how I'm going to treat it.
Sprinkle it on there.
I also got some brown sugar because I am a little scared. So
Back in the day, you could tell yourself that this was healthy because the water would probably give you dysentery.
and also because there was no like FDA or whatever.
Yeah, you didn't have to wear a mask back then. We had real freedom.
There was no such thing as vaccines.
You used to call it summer. Now you got to call it civic season. That's a callback from earlier in the show.
If you got sick, you just died
At the age of 13.
from having too much diarrhea.
Is the lemon garnish or is the lemon like, should the lemon be squeezed
The
in?
lemon's for juice. So our recipe is calling for, a little dash of lemon juice in there. But as I said, I also found lime was pretty prominent. And also, you can really tailor this to how you like. So if you don't think you're going to like that acidity, leave it out. It's America. Freedom, baby.
Freedom.
Since 1865.
For some groups. Conditions apply. I'm thinking about this. If you are an alcoholic in like colonial times, you like really, really went for it, right? Like, because since everyone was like kind of drunk or like not
You
drunk,
had to
but,
be pretty obvious, like stumbling in church, like can't complete a sentence. Like, it's pretty.
yeah,
pretty
like
rough.
drinking like 4 of these in a row.
Like the baseline is functional alcohol.
If you can do farm work, go to church, be in the legislature, like you're not an alcoholic, no matter what else you do.
Are you guys ready?
Yeah.
Let's do
All
it
right,
up.
let's go.
Cheers.
All right.
Cheers.
I'm toasting the Juneteenth, America's real Independence Day.
Hell yeah. We need to put some red Kool-Aid in this for Juneteenth.
All right, here we go.
How would you guys describe it?
Alcoholic.
It's tart at the front and fury at the back.
Yeah, I like it. I'm tasting that sherry. That sherry is like an overhand punch. The back is like, might be the favorite cocktail that we've made thus far.
Really?
I was here for the last one, the grog. I like the grog.
Grog was good.
Yeah.
Grog wasn't bad.
The grog was the most like simplistic and like it just everything was familiar. It was like, oh, these are all ingredients you'd use in a cocktail. Whereas like this is like all these ingredients in one cocktail?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would order this, but I will reluctantly finish this drink and then try to get some work done drunkenly.
I liked it more than I thought I would. Like, I also wouldn't order it.
Yeah, I don't think I would order it. But I mean, I like the Imperial Stout and the other stuff isn't quite covering it up yet. So.
Yeah, so it's not completely ruining its ingredients.
I want to like this. I don't know if I do. I will drink it anyway.
I'm going to drink half, not to waste it, and not drink half so that I don't have a repeat of flip. Opinion on taste, this is probably my favorite one we've done thus far.
I liked grog the best.
I get the argument, yeah.
It just shows you the power of branding that,
No.
all these drinks are forgotten, but grog is the only one that shouldn't be, and it's definitely got the worst name.
I know.
Yeah.
I think of an ugly Greg, like a man named Greg, but who is of
It's nice names.
I mean,
name's Grog.
Grog is gross, but when I hear Rattle Skull, I think I'm gonna die.
Yes.
Definitely winning the name game thus far.
Yeah,
It's a cool name. Yeah.
I'd get that name tattooed on me if I wanted to seem badass, you know? Like, rattle skull.
Yeah.
I'll rattle your skull.
It's definitely tied with Flip for would make the best nickname.
Rattle Skull is a pretty badass nickname. Yeah, you know you earned that. Cheers again to America since 1865. 1980. It's been kind of all right since the 80s.
Well, don't forget about the war on drugs. I mean, there's
Let's say America
Slowly
since
but surely.
yesterday.
to a more perfect union.
Hopefully.
Or a less worse one. All right. Love you all.
Oh, guys, thanks so much.
Our next guest is a professor of history at the University of New Hampshire and the author of the book, Among the Powers of the Earth, the American Revolution and the Making of a New World Empire. Please welcome Dr. Eliga Gould. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Rob. It's great to be here.
One of your central themes is the importance of the new nation of America being treaty worthy. Why was that so important?
Actually, when I'm teaching my classes, I invite my students to think about what do you need to do if you declare independence? Let's say we declared independence and we became History 603 nation. What would have to happen for that to be a reality? And, the first answer is we'd have to avoid being, committed because we'd gone insane. But, basically anyone can declare themselves to be anything. But there's always another side to that, and that is acceptance. And when you declare independence, that's only the first step. There is another step, and that step involves being accepted, in the case of the United States, by the powers of the earth.
Do you have a lot of confidence in the governing abilities of History 603?
Some semesters are better than others, Rob.
A good
this
answer.
semester I had a pretty good group. If they're watching this, you guys were great.
You talk in your book about an early treaty where John Adams attempted to get France to concede that Canada belonged to the United States. Did that work?
Vraiment. No, it didn't. Yeah, so what you're referring to is right after Congress adopted the Declaration of Independence, signed it and all that, they set about doing two other things. One, they started drafting Articles of Confederation. There are actually three parts to independence. Declaration, you need to have a governing document, which was the Articles of Confederation. And they also started drafting what they called a model treaty or a plan of treaties to guide their relations with their allies in Europe. And the ally they're thinking of is France. And as part of that, because of course, those of you who know your history will recall that France not too long ago had been a major colonial power in North America, including Quebec. That was the big French colony. So the model treaty laid out those parts of the British Empire that France would recognize as potentially part of the United States. And they included Quebec, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, Bermuda, the Bahamas, and the two Floridas, East and West Florida, which were British colonies at this point, all of them British colonies. And so we get there the sense of the United States as the authors of this document, the lead author was John Adams, imagined it in 1776. Needless to say, that's a nation that's never existed. But, it's a reminder of just how fluid and in play things like the nation's boundaries were going to be.
You also talk in your book about the perception that the slave trade was not perceived as a practice becoming of a treaty-worthy nation. But regardless, slavery persisted. Why do you think that was?
So the moment of the American Revolution is also a moment when Europeans are starting to wake up and smell the coffee and question the morality and the legality of slavery. That includes both the slave trade, that is the kidnapping of Africans in Africa and shipping them to the New World, and then the practice of slavery itself. So the United States, or Congress, speaking on behalf of the 13 states in 1776, is trying to convince the nations of the earth, which means in practice European nations, that they are worthy of independence, worthy of entering into treaty relationships with. And so one of the things they do is they embrace the cause of opposing the slave trade. And there's a lot being written about the slave trade at this point. I mean, they're horrible stories. I mean, everything about slavery is awful, but the slave trade particularly gripped people's attention. So even though the slave trade is still legal in Britain, France is engaged in it, most European powers are themselves involved in the slave trade. Congress they enact resolutions against it, and many states start taking steps to curtail the slave trade. And I argue, I mean, there are other reasons behind this. This isn't the only reason, but in part, it's to make put the United States on the right side of history, if you will, and to show that Americans were determined to be a civilized people. So that's the slave trade. Slavery itself is a different matter, though that comes into play in this as well. But there are 13 states, each with control over affairs within their own borders. Some beginning to take steps to abolish slavery. Massachusetts is a star in this story, so is Pennsylvania. Other states, of course, don't. If anything, South Carolina and Georgia go even more all in on slavery. So there's not just one story on this, but that is part of this quest for recognition.
Yeah, and that kind of brings me to the next point that you talk about in your book, which is that the United States as a nation isn't really how we think of it now, back in the 18th century.
Yeah, I mean, to even call the United States a nation is slightly inaccurate. I used it at points in the book because people at the time do talk about the United States as a nation, but it is a loose-knit confederation, a nation made up of a confederation of 13 states. That is before the Constitution, and even after the Constitution is, it's adopted by the convention in 1787, ratified in 88, goes into effect in 1789, even after the Constitution, which consolidates the Union. And John Adams says it is now a nation. Congress becomes the national legislature, and yet it's still very loose-knit.
This sort of move towards being treaty worthy is is sort of the U.S. trying to kind of fit into the European idea of being treaty worthy, but they did have treaties with other nations other than European nations too.
The first treaty under the new Constitution in 1790 is between the United States and the Creek Nation. The Creek is the big, most powerful indigenous nation in the Southeast. And the chief of the Creeks, a man named Alexander McGillivray, comes to New York. There's a very carefully scripted set of ceremonies. He meets with President Washington in New York. At this point is the capital. Abigail Adams is totally swept off her feet by him. He's handsome, he's urbane, and they signed this treaty, and it's actually that Creek Treaty that sets the precedent for what the ratification ceremony will be like in the Senate. So actually, the United States' first international treaty under the new Constitution is with an indigenous power, the Creek Nation.
We associate our revolution with freedom. Yet you say the American Revolution created new hierarchies of value, new forms of dependency, and often new language of exclusion. Yes. What do you mean by that?
The revolution creates a much more effective imperial power. in the eastern third of North America. And we know, of course, eventually it spreads across the Mississippi, reaching, in the 1840s all the way to the Pacific. So one of the things the revolution does is create a imperial power, the United States, that is much more effective at occupying indigenous land, displacing indigenous peoples than the colonies had been before. Another sort of question worth considering is, what are the consequences of the revolution for enslaved peoples? If you look at the history of slavery in the British Empire, Britain abolishes slavery in the 1830s in the West Indies, whereas in the southern states, where slavery remained legal after the revolution, slavery lasts until 1865.
Well, good luck with the Sea Student Rebellion of 603. Everyone, please check out Eliga Gould's book. It is called Among the Powers of the Earth, the American Revolution and the Making of a New World Empire. It's a great book. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Rob. It's been my pleasure.
We'll be right back. UFOs have been all over the news lately, with testimony and video from fighter jet cockpits showing unexplainable events in the sky. Congress has even approved an official investigation into possible alien contact, prompting many to ask, how long has this been going on? Here at Revolutionary Spaces, we've decided to dig deeper, and we have recruited our guests to help in a game we call Was It Aliens? Our researchers have compiled a series of historical events based on primary sources and eyewitness testimony, and our guests need to tell us whether they think it might have been aliens. Are you ready?
Go for it.
Phenomenon number one. On May 19th, 1780, darkness slowly descended over New England. Mid-morning was dim, and by noon that day, Bostonians had to use candles to see, as an unexplained presence blotted out the sun, prompting thousands to worry that the day of judgment had arrived. How do you explain that, historians? Was it aliens?
What do you think, Serena?
Oh, that's so mean. I think actually, that the presence of the unexplainable was common in early America. Lots of people thought that there are signs, importance, they're everywhere. What is the difference in the 18th century between aliens and the hand of God? I'm not sure. So maybe.
Yeah, who knows? The year without summer. If it could happen then, why not in 1780?
Yeah, I don't think it was Krakatoa, but you never know.
It seems like you're both maybe saying that maybe it's aliens. Is that the answer you're going with?
I hate to say no.
Yeah. Are we supposed to be open-minded?
I want to believe.
Either that, or so many people had previously been building pizza ovens that there was an immense amount of smoke in the air from everyone's backyard ovens, and there we are.
That's possible too. Colonial pizza oven. There's not enough written about it.
Yeah, that does certainly fit with my particular method of making pizza. Well, let's move on to our next phenomenon. On April 18, 1775, the whole of Charlestown was brought into a stir as two bright lights appeared in the sky as high as any man-made construction. As many as a dozen or more people rushed towards the New England countryside by horse to warn of impending invasion. How do you explain that? Was it aliens?
That one I have a harder time with. Although it's possible, far be it from me to actually, deny the presence of aliens anywhere. I think that signal fires, possibly beacons, we might think here about Beacon Hill, might explain things, but I don't know.
Yeah, and I somewhere in, when I was in graduate school, or was it second grade, I remember reading about this guy, Paul Revere. And, I think there's something here,
Maybe people were saying to each other, you should watch out, because I think that there's a bunch of guys who are strangely dressed in heavy wool clothing, tramping through the countryside. They're a little wet. They're maybe not that quiet, but nonetheless, you might want to get ready. It might just take, you may only have a minute to get a lot of men organized to get out on your village green.
And those red coats don't mean they're from the red planet.
That is Mars, which is Mars is the god of war, I believe. So that would have made sense.
Ooh, nice! Ding, 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 ding.
So you're gonna say your answer on this? What's your final say? Aliens or not aliens?
We're gonna go out on a limb,
Not
we say
aliens.
not aliens.
On July 4th, 1776, representatives from over a dozen disillusioned New World colonies agreed to formal separation from their original port of origin. The designated leader of the representative body signed his signature so large that some say it could be seen from the farthest reaches of space. Got you there. Was it aliens?
Wow.
John Hancock is like the Great Wall of China.
Or Shea Stadium.
We certainly consider him to be a wonder of the world.
That's right.
Here in Boston.
I'd heard it was the king needed to would not need to wear his spectacles.
Yes.
If the king happened to be on Mars for a couple of months, he also wouldn't need spectacles there, I guess.
Yes, I'd say John Hancock. Maybe I might suggest that this is a place not for, alien hunters, but maybe for like a psychologist. I mean, I think it's maybe says something about the size of his ego that he was signing like that. So I say John Hancock and his ego.
I'm good with that.
On October 27th, 2004, a group of local men overturned a well-known curse put upon them by possibly Illuminati-connected businessmen and claimed a supreme victory for the first time in almost a century, beginning the renewed and some might say supernatural era of Boston as a city of champions. Seriously, do you think aliens were involved here?
Definitely. Oops. I don't think it's happened yet. That's all a myth.
Look, we've got some sports teams whose championships have been called into question, but I don't think that this is one of those cases.
Serena, you haven't said anything.
I know. I fear that I will never be allowed in Boston again if I admit to the depth of my ignorance about the Red Sox. But I will say that that the curse, yes, was just not aliens, just New Yorkers. That's what I say.
Yeah. Now, Bill Buckner's legs, that World Series, there might have been aliens involved in that.
Yeah, that was a little bit harder to explain.
Yeah, Bill Buckner might be an alien. Who knows?
It would be a good excuse. On March 1st, 1639, colonial governor John Winthrop recorded testimony of multiple colonists who reported seeing a green light zipping back and forth over the Charles River like an arrow over the course of 2 to 3 hours. At one point, the light reportedly came down from the sky and took the form of something resembling a pig. Was it aliens?
Oh.
Serena, you work on an earlier period than I do. This is...
I know. Again, so this, I think, brings together two of my favorite concepts of early America. One is, again, the unending portents in which, all things are explainable, right? Through saying that God is sending a message. We just got to figure out exactly what it is. Is that important a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Is it warning us of something that we already did wrong? Or is it telling us about something that's going to happen? Who knows, but it's definitely a sign. It's a sign of something. So it brings together first this idea that Providence has something to say. You just don't quite know what. And the second one is a phenomenon that comes a little later, but nonetheless, I love, which is the idea of the learned pig, right? The pig, I love the learned pig. The pig that like travels around. Many people had learned, well, okay, there were several learned pigs, at least in early America. Maybe many people didn't have them, and they could spell. Like you gave them letters and they would like spell things with their snouts by pushing the letters into place. They could add better than I could. So I think that that's what actually this Portman was saying is look for the learned pig.
So I may be misunderstanding, but are you saying that pigs are aliens or that God is an alien? Those are my two interpretations.
I am not going to say on something that's been recorded on Zoom that God is an alien. I'm not saying that.
Okay.
Serena has just covered the bases so well, going back to our previous question, that I'm not sure I could add anything, but I guess what I would say is things like this happen in New England all the time. And nobody would say they were space aliens. I mean, it's just, that's, Professor, that's just what happens.
Yeah. I've seen weird green lights in the sky over New England, to be honest with you, in New Hampshire, actually.
That's right.
Conclusive statements from two professors of history that aliens are real. Thank you so much. Can we agree on that? I think I think I'm understanding what you're saying.
Well, the odds.
Thank you. Eliga Gould and Serena Zabin, thank you so much. We'll be back with more Tea Party tonight. Our next guest operates out of the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History and is the project manager for Made by Us, a really ambitious new collaboration between dozens of history museums and sites across the country. Please welcome Caroline Klibanoff. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Tell us a little bit about Made by Us.
Yeah, so Made by Us is a pretty new program. We bring together hundreds of the nation's museums, historical sites, historical societies across the country in a collaboration to reach and engage the next generation. So millennials and Gen Z, and specifically those 18 to 30. And you may not know this, but that age group is somewhat underserved by museums. There's not always a lot of programs targeted for them. And at the same time, that's a really important age for the future of our country. That's when a lot of people are first deploying their civic identity, they're voting, they're taking action in their communities. So Made by Us is designed to support that civic participation with all the power of history, the context, understanding how we got here, access to sources that are trustworthy from so many different sites nationwide.
Now, you just launched a program called Civic Season. What's that about?
So the Civic Season is a really big and bold idea. We're very excited. Between Juneteenth and July 4th every summer, we're envisioning a new season, a new holiday tradition that makes room for all of our stories. It's a time to explore our past in all of its complexity and use that to springboard into the future that we want. So this really came about because the 4th of July last year during the pandemic was a challenged holiday. There was a lot of people that felt like there wasn't a lot to celebrate. I mean, we were 3 months into a pandemic. There were protests for racial justice. There were just obvious gaps in our infrastructure. It felt like a tough time to celebrate, especially for younger Americans. So now that we're coming out of the pandemic, we're coming again to the 4th of July, and we know that Juneteenth has taken on new resonance across the country. People are paying attention. People are learning about what that holiday means, what that celebration is all about. And it just makes sense to expand the lens, to go beyond, one day of July 4th and say, we can have a season where we all pitch in, we all take action to move the needle towards the country that we want to live in.
What are some of the things that are happening during Civic Season that you're the most excited about?
I'm very excited that we have collected 450 activities, events, and resources from trusted institutions across the country. So you can go to thecivicseason.com. You can find podcasts about voting rights. You can do the lunch counter simulation of the Greensboro segregated lunch counter from the National Center for Civil and Human Rights. You can sign up for a walking tour in your neighborhood. There's videos, there's curriculum, like really whatever your preference is. If you have 5 minutes or you have half a day, there's a way for you to dig into our past and also take action for our future. So I'm very excited about just the variety of ways you can plug in.
Yeah, there's a lot of really fun stuff. I saw the Civic Season bingo card, which I thought was really fun. I saw one of the items on it was read a book, and here at Tea Party Tonight, the talk of the show is that I read a book for this episode.
Me too.
Very proud of
That's good.
it.
So you can mark off your card.
Why is this work important to you?
Now is a time to say, because we live in a digital age, we don't have to choose one story. We don't have to choose a single narrow view that says, you know, our story is about 1776 or our story is about 1619. We are able to tell the multitude of people and moments and events that have shaped America through even before it was America. And I think that's really why the Civic Season matters right now this summer.
I want to thank you so much for joining us. And could I just ask you to just let us know where we can find you on the internet?
Absolutely. So you can find Made by Us at History Made by Us and check us out online at historymadebyus.org. Be sure to check out the Civic Season, thecivicseason.com and hashtag Civic Season. There's so many ways to get started, and I just encourage you to pick one.
Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be right back.
Father's Day is just around the corner. Picking a gift for a regular father is as simple as picking a random page out of a Sharper Image catalog. But what about America's original fathers, the founding fathers? Here are some gifts that might be suitable for what we call Founding Father's Day. Author, printer, inventor, there was little Benjamin Franklin couldn't do. His contributions to the early United States were so significant that he remains one of only 2 non-U.S. presidents to appear on American paper money. The only other being Alexander Hamilton, who Franklin is, mathematically speaking, 10 times better than. What could a man as accomplished as Franklin need? Any kind of hat. Well, Franklin's male pattern baldness was certainly no fault of his. Franklin did subsequently choose to embrace the ugliest haircut in American history, including Macklemore's. Imagine what he could have accomplished had he not subjected his peers to his greasy skullet. Additionally, he remains the only person who looks better when dressed as a professional poker player. Thomas Jefferson had an immeasurable impact on the foundation of the nation, credited to his penning the Declaration of Independence. A staunch defender of personal liberty, he believed that each individual was endowed with certain inalienable rights. These rights, however, did not extend to the legions of African Americans he enslaved. As such, the perfect gift for Thomas Jefferson would be blinders. Crafted from the finest linens and cloths, blinders could help Thomas Jefferson race towards a more perfect union ahead of us without being distracted by all of the pesky double standards and inconsistencies in his moral code all around him. John Hancock enjoyed a successful career as a wealthy businessman and politician before embarking on his career as a superhero. Arguably, his most well-known act was his signature on the Declaration of Independence. Rumor is that Hancock's reasoning was that he wanted King George to be able to read his name without wearing his glasses. A perfect gift for a man that brash is a 2021 Maserati MC20. Obviously, Hancock was the kind of guy who needed to announce himself. Sports cars have long been the accoutrement of choice for loud rich guys with too much to prove. Plus, with a name like that, you know he was compensating for something. George Washington is often thought of as one of our nation's presidents. Admired as a capable general despite his astonishing record of losses, Washington was lionized in his time, and his mythos is forever etched in the annals of American history. But what do you get a man who has an abundance of respect. Furniture polish. It's a widely held belief that Washington had a set of wooden dentures. He presumably lost his teeth from biting his tongue so hard when asked how he could fight for freedom while owning hundreds of slaves. Furniture polish would be the perfect gift for the president to shine his not-so-pearly whites. Gouverneur Morris. One of the lesser-known founders, Morris was instrumental in the drafting of the preamble of the Constitution. A prominent lawyer and merchant, Morris's life was tragically cut short after he died trying to make his own catheter. Mighty voice in shaping the Constitution, we can only imagine he would have loved to receive his very own super PAC. Morris clearly had a keen eye for politics, but must have had trouble securing campaign funds. I mean, after all, a man who makes his own catheter clearly doesn't have money to throw around. Sadly, we'll never know what life would have been like had Gouverneur Morris become Governor Morris. Gouverneur Morris. Governor. Learn more at goov4gov.gov. Goov4gov.gov. Learn more at goov4gov.gov. The first Treasurer of the United States, Alexander Hamilton, had a brilliant career as a politician and financier before embarking on a career on Broadway. Hey, and if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere, except maybe Weehawken. His genius was only matched by his impetuousness, a behavior that many believed led to his untimely death at the age of 47. Though he's long since passed away, we would like to think the perfect gift for Hamilton would be a bulletproof vest and a minigun. Who knows? If Hamilton had been properly kitted out, he might still be with us today. Would have ruined the end of the musical, though. And that's Founding Fathers Day. We'll be right back. And that is our show. We did it again. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to our guests. Thank you to Caroline Klibanoff. Thank you to Serena Zabin. Thank you to Eliga Gould. Please subscribe to Revolutionary Spaces YouTube channel. Like Revolutionary Spaces on all the social media. And come visit Revolutionary Spaces. Come visit the Old South Meeting House. It is open again. Come to the Old State House. It is open again. It's going to be an amazing summer, and we will see you after the summer in September for our next episode of Tea Party Tonight. Have a great civic season. Thanks for watching.